Welcome to the Michigan Golfer Show. Join us each week as we explore the people, the places, and the events that shape our great game.
Hi, I'm Jennie McCafferty. I'm here today at Radrick Farms with none other than Bill Newcomb. How are you doing today, Bill?
I'm fine. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's an interesting place to be because one of the things people always want to know about Radrick Farms is how did it get its name? And you have an interesting story about that.
Well, he got its name because basically because the owner at the time of the land was naming various things on the property because it was a multi-use property at one time. It was for sheep, it was for cattle for a while. They did a little forestation over there, and Fred Mathai, who was responsible for really presenting this to the university as a potential golf course site, and they named it Radrick Farms.
And Rad came from his son Conrad,
Right.
and Rick came from his son Frederick.
It was a family thing.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure was. Well, today we actually want to focus on something pretty specific about golf course architects, and that is education.
It helps.
How do you come by your education? And in fact, you're from Indiana,
Yes.
as is Pete Dye,
Yes.
and you started working with Pete Dye.
Yeah. Well, I had casually known Pete through Indiana golf, and Pete had won the Indiana Am I think 3 years before I was runner-up in the Indiana Am, and so it was nice, almost equals in terms of golf. Now, Pete had a lot more years of golf than I did at that point. I was still in college, but I knew him, he knew me, and that eventually led to our work here at Radrick Farms.
Well, at some point he had a bunch of courses that he said, I really don't feel like doing these, and he gave them to you to do. So all of a sudden, he says, you have your own firm. That's an amazing start.
Well, it was an amazing start, and in terms of hard dollars, I probably made more dollars in those 2 years than I have the next 10 years, probably. But it was an amazing start. It was on the up ramp, though. This wasn't just out of the blue. From our knowing each other from golf, and then got together here through a white paper that I had written for the Mathai family and the university to say who should be the real architect here. And so I covered all the bases, Robert Trent Jones, Dick Wilson, a couple of Chicago architects, and at the time, Pete Dye, who was pretty much an unknown at that point in time. So that's how all of that evolved.
Well, it's also interesting, and we should back up just a bit, in that you're from Indiana, but you decided to go to University of Michigan.
Yes.
Maybe that's because academics, landscape architecture, what?
Well, it was before I learned Go Blue. It was education. It was the School of Architecture at Michigan, renowned school, and I really would have gone to Indiana because my father was a graduate of University of Indiana, but I wasn't going into medicine. I'd lived with the doctor. I knew how much work that was. And Michigan was the only one of 2 Big Ten schools that had an architecture program. And I wanted to be an architect, and I wanted to be in the Big Ten. I was a big school fan.
Okay, when you say architect, you're not talking about landscape. You're talking about buildings.
Hardcore materials.
It's a little bit of a change to get to landscape architecture, but that is a pretty typical degree for somebody who becomes a golf course architect.
It is. It should be, I think. And I got to landscape architecture not out of thinking about going into golf architecture at all. I got to landscape architecture because at the time, even though we didn't realize it, we had two world-class teachers there, professors.
Oh,
Bill Johnson and Carl Johnson,
okay.
who used to be JJ&R here in
Okay.
Ann Arbor and the world. And they became classic campus planners, big scale kinds of things. And I thought if I was going to become an architect and go to Chicago, which I wanted to do, I should probably take their course and not miss out on the opportunity, because everyone knew at that point they were world class.
Okay.
And so I took the degree of landscape masters in landscape architecture.
And that's pretty interesting. And that somehow you also knew Pete Dye from Indiana,
Right.
started working with Pete Dye, and at some point he was looking around, said, I have these 5 courses. I don't want to do them. Why don't you do them, Bill?
Well, that's exactly what happened. And once he was retained here as the architect to do Radrick Farms,
Yeah.
I did go out in the field. I dug trenches, I picked rocks, I did all those things that you're supposed to do, even with a graduate degree. And so we worked together for about 3 years.
Oh, okay.
And I always said Pete was a great architect because he was unencumbered by formal classroom training. It was intuitive to him. He had played golf courses in England, St. Andrews and some of those to get the feel of what he wanted to do. In addition to that, which a lot of people don't recognize was his training, I will say, was he was grounds head of grounds committee of a country club.
Oh,
Not only one, but 2 country clubs.
okay.
The 2 probably outstanding country clubs in Indianapolis, Meridian Hills and Indianapolis Country Club.
Okay.
And so all that play, he was a good player, we know that. And then his interest in turf grasses and golf architecture. He was this ground superintendent, head of kind of, and so he learned a lot. That was his picking stones period, I would say.
It's a great way to
Yeah,
identify it. Yeah.
exactly. And so he started there in Indianapolis, and then proceeded to build a couple of courses, kind of unrecognized really, in Indianapolis. And then we got together again, and I worked for him for 3 years.
How did you meet him?
Pardon?
How did you meet him?
Well, I met him because of golf.
Okay.
Years before,
Oh,
5
okay.
years before.
Just
4
because
years.
you're hanging out on
Just
courses.
because we're all
Okay.
hanging out on the putting green.
I see.
Yeah, exactly. And then he was kind enough, after he got Radrick Farms, of which I wrote a white paper on, as I said, Jones, Wilson, and
This is part of your college degree.
it was all
Yeah.
part of the wrap up of the project.
Yeah.
And Pete Dye got the job. So I think out of guilt, he probably hired me to do a little more than pick stones. And I will never forget my first client meeting. He and I were alone with the client for about an hour, and then he left town. Typical Pete. I got to go somewhere. He left town, and he said, "Okay, Bill, you're in charge."
Wow.
And he told the clients, "Bill's in charge."
Wow.
And so they got to know me. I got to know them, and that was really my start, first job.
Well, one of the interesting things about your getting started in golf is that you made your name as a player, and we're talking big-time credentials. You won the Michigan Amateur, you won the Indiana Amateur, you qualified for the National Amateur and came in, 3rd or something.
Not quite at the national. I was a quarterfinalist in the
Quarterfinals,
nationals.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what launched me to play in the Masters as an amateur. At that point, they were taking 8 amateurs, so I was one of those 8.
Yeah.
But that launched my career. You're right. That's
What was that like, playing the Masters?
Great. I played, let's see, my last round. Well, I only played 2 rounds. I didn't make the cut. But the second round, I played with Junior Saracen.
Wow.
What a fun time.
Wow.
You
No
know?
kidding.
Yeah. He's a yacker. He's kind of a yacker, and you know, they called him a little bantam rooster, and he's not very tall. He's fairly short.
Okay.
As a lot of the really good golfers early on were. There weren't many really tall
Yeah.
golfers, and they were all Ben Hogan size, you know, 5'10" under,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
built to the ground, you know, the ground makes the shot.
Hey, in my family, 5'10" is tall. Well, one of the things that, I mean, Pete Dye's known for some things, but he always talked about 3 phases of you plan a golf course, you build a golf course, and then you appreciate a golf course. And there's an interesting kind of gap between build and appreciate.
Yes, that's right. The initial appreciation is that, God, we're done. We got grass on the ground, and we're not eroding away somewhere. But yeah, I think that's absolutely right. It takes a little test of time. You just got to stand the test of time, like many things.
Yeah.
And over that time period, you've either been successful or you haven't been successful, depending on your viewpoint.
Speaking of viewpoints, one of the people you work with is someone who's not known for being easy to work with, and that's Everett Kircher.
Good old Everett.
You worked with him at Boyne, and he was different. He wanted to sit down with the architect, not just be handed some plans. What was that like?
That was exactly right. I appreciated it because Boyne, as you know, was a big-time resort. Is a big-time resort. Bigger now than, of course, double the size when I was there. But yes, I was told by a couple of people who worked there and were instrumental in Boyne's operation. They said, Newcomb, I don't understand it, but you have the longest working relationship with Everett Kircher than anyone we've ever known.
That sounds like you need a badge. That's amazing.
It was fun. I learned a lot from Everett. Everett was a consummate businessman.
Okay.
Just consummate. And of course, if he did it, he wanted to do it right. So when he did his first golf course, which was really up at Boyne Highlands, he had Robert Trent Jones come in and do it. And as Everett says it, yeah, we saw him a couple of times when he picked up a check, and then when he dropped us a parachute of plans from the plane as they flew over. That's probably close to being true, actually. But Boyne learned a lot then. They learned a lot in construction. I mean, Trent Jones actually probably held their hand part of the time and brought in his own operator and shaped the greens and tees and so forth. Yeah. And they had a wonderful golf course. Very, very nice.
Oh, they certainly have. Yeah.
And so with that background, somehow I got in the mix, mainly because I'd won the Michigan Amateur.
Oh.
So I
brought you to his attention.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
okay.
Knowing Everett now, I don't say that I was a star of stars because I wasn't there, except I was a star golfer. That's what Everett wanted, was something to beat the drums about, be expansive about. So I hired Bill Newcomb.
Okay.
And he did. And I went to work for him for 21 years.
21, wow, that is a while. That's amazing.
Well, we did 4 courses up there.
Yeah. Well, you know, since we're focusing on education, I think there's formal education, but there's also almost like an apprenticeship.
Yes, yes.
You're really working with people and learning hands-on.
Right, right. And I had the opportunity to do that with Pete, as I said. He kind of walked away and said, "Your job, Bill."
Yeah.
But what happened then? he and I worked together, and I was the apprentice. There's no question about it. I knew a lot about how to hit a golf ball, but when you're talking about constructing a golf course, you know, the whole myriad of facts that go into it. You know, topography, drainage, permitting, length of a course, difficulty of a course. You learn that by only one way, being in the field,
Yeah.
and walking with the stones and the trees and so forth. And my children used to say, and others have always said, well, how do you determine on a site, how do you determine where the holes are going to be? And I said, well, the site will talk to you.
Oh, okay.
And of course it does. My children never let me forget that, though. Dad's going to go talk to the site.
That's kind of fun, I think. But there's so many aspects of it. There's
yeah.
construction. There's, you mentioned drainage. There's maintaining a course. There's all these things you have to think about. So, Bill, there's so many things that go into being a golf course architect.
Yeah.
And then you take another step and you're training other people. You're teaching other people. And that's different. You didn't have a textbook, right?
In the teaching the other students and teaching other people more about the details of what is involved in creating a course. Mm-hmm. When Pete Dye had said, okay, Bill, here's 4 courses that are yours. Thank you for working with us for 3 years. You're on your own, kind of thing. I had been prepared well by being in the field myself. Mm-hmm. And we had a company that you had to train people on the go, you know?
Okay.
I mean,
So you're already doing
so
training.
I'm already training,
Yeah.
and I'm training for our corporate well-being and so forth. And so I think that training became known pretty much in the state of Michigan, at least in the golf community. And Michigan State got a hold of me and asked if I would do a guest lecture up there
Oh,
for one afternoon. I mean,
Okay.
it was like a 3-hour course or something.
okay.
And
What was the course on?
it was in the School of Agronomy.
Okay.
These
Yeah.
are young men who are going to become agronomists.
The turf grass people.
Yeah, the turfgrass people.
Okay.
And so they asked me would I do a lecture up there. I said, sure, I'd be glad to do a lecture up there. And that's the way things started.
Okay.
At a very small scale. It was one lecture, talking to about 40 students, I
Wow.
think. 35 to 40 students.
That's a big class.
It is a pretty good sized class, but it's a nice representation. You get a lot of viewpoints when you get 40 students together. And this was a different level of students. We had first year students. This course was open during the first year. I mean, it was offered in the first year. We had some 4-year program people come over, but primarily we were teaching a course of 2 years of academic interest in golf course architecture
Okay.
to certificate people. When you got out of state, you had a 2-year person was a certificate person. Then we had the 4-year students who were a little more involved in higher academics of that, beyond the golf course.
So when you're doing this, I imagine you're in a classroom, but you're also probably out on a course.
No, we did everything in the classroom.
Everything. Okay.
We did. Primarily because in order to get in the course and be accepted to the program,
Okay.
if you weren't a 4-year student, that's a side point. But the certificate people were already golf course superintendents or working on a golf course.
Okay.
So they had as good an understanding as you could ask for as a teacher
Sure.
to say, these are educated students. They know what we're talking about. You know, when
Wow.
I talk about drainage and swales and topographies, they have an understanding of that already. They know they have to watch erosion, you know, and that kind of thing. So it was a very nice group to teach, too.
So it wasn't intimidating?
No, I don't think it was intimidating.
Okay.
No, I hope I didn't intimidate them. Because I can ramble on about a lot of things that get pretty specific. but that wasn't our point. Our point was, and I give a lot of credit here to my person who guided me at Michigan State, Ken Payne, was head of the agronomy program at Michigan State, and he was a wonderful guy. And we had wonderful post-lecture sessions of what we covered. You know, he would always buy me dinner. It was just great. I walk off the stage, and the next thing we're going down is to the restaurant, and we're having post. I don't say post-mortem, but post classes. That's right. And so from Ken's kind of direction, okay, this is after the first class now. When I was a guest, I was just a guest. And we had this post class kind of situations, and he said, you know, I was so impressed with that. And I said, well, really, Ken, thank you. And he said, I think we might be able to make this into an every Wednesday kind of thing. And I was kind of, really? I said, I'm from Michigan. This is Michigan State. And he said, oh, in academics, we go through all that. There's nothing wrong with that. So I said, okay. So anyway, in a couple of weeks, we kind of hashed out what the idea was. And the idea was, from Payne's viewpoint and Michigan State's, was in this program, pretty much every week they would have guest speaker in. And I happened to be that one guest speaker that one time.
Okay.
And they said that was so interesting, and the students want more of that. We're just going to make this a course if you'll sign up for that.
So that means you're responsible for the content of the course.
Absolutely.
So did you bring in guest speakers?
No.
No.
I was the guest speaker.
Okay.
And fortunately, I was out in the field, I was in the corporate world, I was doing what I like to do, and I could bring that to the students.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, half of the students were eager to learn about architecture. The other half weren't so eager, but, you know, you get them all together and you get them a project, like I give them a 8.5 by 11 sheet, and then we'll say, we're going to draw a par 5 golf hole today.
Oh, okay.
And then you would go through all the things of what makes up a par 5 golf hole. And I always love par 5s because you got 3 different things. You got tee shot, second shot, and then hopefully a wedge shot. Although you watch TV today, it's a tee shot and a 3-wood, and that's it. They've gone through the wedges. But anyway, you get to explain to them, what do you look for on a tee shot? Is that the same as it is for par 4?
Okay.
What about a par 3?
Okay.
And fortunately, I was out in the field, I was in the corporate world, I was doing what I like to do, and I could bring that to the students.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, half of the students were eager to learn about architecture. The other half weren't so eager, but, you know, you get them all together and you get them a project, like I give them a 8.5 by 11 sheet, and then we'll say, we're going to draw a par 5 golf hole today.
Oh, okay.
And then you would go through all the things of what makes up a par 5 golf hole. And I always love par 5s because you got 3 different things. You got tee shot, second shot, and then hopefully a wedge shot. Although you watch TV today, it's a tee shot and a 3-wood, and that's it. They've gone through the wedges. But anyway, you get to explain to them, what do you look for on a tee shot? Is that the same as it is for par 4?
Okay.
What about a par 3?
Yeah.
You know, how long, how short? What are you trying to prove as the site is going to talk to you to say, you know, this is what you could do with this site. So we had all of that to get through in a semester. So I got to pick the program. The last half of it, we would design a par 3, a par 4, and a par 5.
Oh.
So they would really have. That's a lot to hold on to when you finish a course.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And of that, I would say a good quarter of them, maybe 30% of them, wanted to go out and build a golf hole. You know, they were into that.
Okay.
Here's my rude question. What do you do about forward tees?
Well, In an academic setting, you have many tees. We talk 4T and 5T kind of things. I'm glad my wife didn't ask that question, because she would be all over me saying, "You didn't plan enough for women's tees."
Well, let's put it this way. I always notice when the forward tees are an afterthought.
And for many, many, many years, I will tell you, they were an afterthought from an architect's viewpoint. Sure. Unfortunately, but that's the way it happened.
Yeah.
Then I think, and they didn't start just anywhere. Forward tees were country club tees.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because they were expensive, they took time and effort, you had to do maintenance on them and the whole thing. So most public courses are the kind you're referring to as, what about the forward tees?
Well, that's an interesting thing that you just brought up, though. How do you teach people about the differences between country club and public?
Well, that is an interesting situation, because they were very aware of that. In my class of 40, I'm going to say 30 of them were from country clubs.
Okay.
We're working at a country club, or we're going to go to a country club, because Ken Payne had this entire list of students, and he had an entire list of courses, golf courses, that wanted these students because they're well educated and so forth. So Ken did some mixing and matching and the whole thing, but primarily private clubs could afford, to pay these people. And so most of them went to private clubs.
It's wonderful to be teaching people for whom there's a demand.
Demand was there.
Yeah.
Believe me, when you got out of Michigan State, there are only about 3 or 4 well-recognized programs. Now, there are more than that, but a couple are very well-recognized. Penn State was one, Michigan State was one, Oregon had a program. They wanted those students because they knew they were getting a good education from experienced people. Not me necessarily, but they had several other areas and classes that they took about agronomy and grass types and procedures of maintenance and the whole thing. Beard came out of Michigan State, went down to Texas, and is world famous.
Who?
Beard.
Oh, yeah.
I know you know him, and I know I probably have done an interview with him, probably. But that was the quality of the program that was being held at Michigan State.
I think one thing that we need to mention before we wrap up is Ferris State University has a program about golf. And most people would say, well, why aren't they doing it? Well, that's not what they did. They did golf course management.
Right, exactly so. And the people that I was dealing with was a little more hardcore. They would have a manager. The manager would discuss something, and then they would go out and do it. But Ferris State is a little different emphasis, and there's so many different parts of golf anymore. The management, the teaching, the playing, the maintenance, it's great. There's so many opportunities out there.
Yeah, there sure are, and you've been part of a lot of it for a long time. So it's very interesting to hear you talk about future golf course architects. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.